have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron. Aaron, hey. Wow, thanks for coming all the way out here.
Yeah, it took me 5 days and 5 nights of travel, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, no way, bud. It's just like...
Just like
the movie that's the game.
The game movie.
The Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's. We were jamming to that on the way here.
Oh, heck yeah. I plan on blasting all the FNAF tunes, you know, which will take me a week to listen to entirely.
I only know the Five Nights at Freddy's.
There's some slammers.
I bet.
Yeah, absolute jammers, dude.
Absolutely. Dude, okay, so in between the teaser for this episode and now, I brushed up on my FNAF lore.
Oh,
I watched
nice.
the game theory timeline summarization. I gotta tell you, it's literally just IRL Chuck E. Cheese lore. I don't know if you know familiar with Chuck E. Cheese lore, but the kind of shit he was saying about the timelines and this, it's the same shit. Literally, Chuck E. Cheese used to be this gritty little pizzeria, and they talked in like fucking Jersey accents, and they would like harass the crowd, and they had hippos with titties and stuff. It's crazy, but then like his business, like this other competition came in and stole his idea, but then they became business partners and collabed the two and put together, and it was like this shit game theory saying. I was like, this is just real Chuck E. Cheese lore.
Man, you did some like real Pepe Sylvia work, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so guys, go look up IRL Chuck E. Cheese lore, because I watched a John Oliver video on it, because he did 30 minutes of Chuck E. Cheese lore one time. It's on YouTube, it's for free, and it gets crazy.
I'll be sure to link it right now, but direct everybody to the mad lore going on. Well, yeah, that's cool. You've caught up on the FNAF lore and everything else.
Now an expert.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the reception this film's been getting, or anything at
No,
all?
I've seen a trailer for it. That's it. That's all I know. I saw a little bit about like people are like, well, don't worry what the critics say because the audience is right, and like critics also didn't like Star Wars or something. So this film's gonna be amazing. But this is, without even looking at the ratings or anything, or any of the reception, I just know, like, this is one of the few films we've watched on this podcast where I know going in that I'm going to cringe. So, I'm prepared for it. My butthole's already, like, puckered.
Is this the film you have feared most on the podcast so far?
I'm actually really excited for it. I feel like I'm going to cringe in a good way, because it's like FNAF movie.
Oh, yeah.
But it is going to be, there can't not be cringe. It's a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. You know, you can't make that without it being some level of cringe, but I'm still, like, anticipating it. It would be like if I was watching a Minecraft movie or something. I know this is going to be cringe, but it's also going to be awesome.
Well, also it's supposed to have Jason Momoa in it, so you know it's good.
The Five Nights at Freddy's
No,
movie?
no, not
the Minecraft
the
movie?
Minecraft
There's
movie.
a Minecraft movie?
Yes!
Oh, I didn't.
I thought you knew about it. That's why I was like...
No, I was just making a joke. Like,
No Joke has Jason Momoa.
When is that out?
I don't know, like 24, 25,
Okay.
I think.
Well, that's exactly what I would have thought The Rock first, but Jason Momoa second. Yeah.
Oh my god.
They're both perfect Minecraft Steves. That's what I imagine.
Okay, confirmation. 2025. It's going to have Jason Momoa,
Pedro Pascal in it?
and Matt Berry.
Wait, Pedro Pascal's Steve and not Jason Momoa?
Jason Momoa's Herobrine.
Oh, shit.
Oh god, was that Hero Brian just now?
Spoilers.
Like,
that'd be a cool plot, actually. I don't know what the plot of the Minecraft movie would be otherwise, but
you know, they'll make it work. Maybe.
they'll kill the Ender Dragon.
Yeah, Man, I forgot to even ask, like, your previous experience with FNAF before we start diving into everything.
Oh, dude, I touched on it a little when we were teasing this last episode, but just I played the first game for like 30 minutes and like struggled to figure out what I was supposed to do, and then I've never played any other games, and I've never really, until prepping for this podcast, I was like, I want to know the Five Nights at Freddy's lore, because everything I know is like third hand from an 8-year-old. So just like people at conventions that are dressed as some Freddy's character, and I'm like, is this just a furry or no? Okay, that's Bonnie. Okay, I get it. You know.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, pretty much my quick experience run, because I know we have definitely gotten derailed and everything with FNAF, as the kids call it, is I was in college, and heard the game came out, and it was just one of the biggest kind of sensations on YouTube, especially Markiplier, like, launching it. Yeah. Which I revisited that video that almost came out 10 years ago. It's like 9 years old. It's so bizarre that video came out, and all I heard is, "Oh my god! What? What's seeing a body?" Ah! And it was that for like 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Do you think Markiplier's going to make a cameo in this?
I know the answer. I don't know if you want me to spoil it or not.
I want to find out on my
Okay,
own.
I know the answer.
Okay.
That's all I'll say about it there. But yeah, it was definitely surreal, kind of revisiting kind of that Markiplier era of Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's just kind of crazy how big and crazy the fandom became from that game series. And you know, Scott Cawthon was just able to pump out video games super quickly just to keep it relevant and just basically build an empire for himself just based off FNAF. So I have to give, like, mad props and kudos to him. Like, think of him what you will, like, it's still pretty sick. That
super impressive. Yeah, especially just I thought FNAF kind of died out a little bit until Security Breach came out, and I was like, oh, people are still into this in a big way. So yeah, great job keeping that franchise alive and building it what it was, because I feel like it was on the level at the time of, like, it's like Slender Man and FNAF are like the cool indie horror games or whatever, but you know, nobody's talking about Slender Man anymore. So
yeah, definitely. It's cool to see, like, 9 years later, them being able to make a movie out of this. So I'm kind of going in with same expectations. Like, I'm not expecting to be wowed or anything by this film, but at the same point, I'm like, it has to be fun.
it's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun. So definitely get your pizza slices ready, boys and girls, because the Freddy Fazbear gang is going to be arriving soon, and we'll let you know what we think about the movie real quick. Okie doke. All right.
Five Nights at Freddy's. That's where I wanna be.
And we are back. We made it to 6 a.m. and we just got done watching Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, initial thoughts and everything, since this is probably the one we were the most curious about.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I feel like the ceiling for how good a Five Nights at Freddy's movie is kind of low. But I do feel like they hit towards the upper end of that ceiling. I feel like if you took something like Five Nights at Freddy's, tried to spin it into a movie, I feel like this was one of the better results that could happen. So, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised with the cinematic experience.
Well, that's good, yeah, because I know that, like, this film's been in development for years, and they've gone through multiple scripts and everything, like, multiple rewrites had to occur. I know they've talked about it, and this is the one that just got final approval, obviously, there. But it is funny, because, I mean, it goes back to the video game adaptation, which, thinking about it, I think this is actually our first video game adaptation we have done for the podcast.
Yeah, I think so. We've definitely watched properties that became video games later, but I think this is the first that is an original video game movie.
Yeah, and there's always been that long-winded belief about, like, if video games don't translate well into movies, but as of recent years, I feel like that's kind of dying a slow paint.
Right, we're a long ways away from the original Super Mario Bros. Movie, and we're pretty close to the new Super Mario Bros. Movie. So people know that, it's not a death sentence to make a game movie.
Which, speaking of which, this film, as of right now, has surpassed the opening box office Super Mario Bros. Got its opening weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nope.
There. So it's very interesting, and I think, yeah, whenever it comes to adaptations and how this film did overall for me, I feel conflicted, because there is, like, I am legit split in the middle. I mean, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, which obviously it's very biased completely there, the critic score, I think, was like at 30% or lower, and then the audience score was like 80s to 90s
Right
there. So it's very much like critics versus audiences there, and I found myself in the middle of it because on the one hand, I was looking at it and I was like, man, if it wasn't Five Nights at Freddy's there, this would completely lose me. But on the other hand, whenever it does throw in all the FNAF stuff and everything else, I'm like, wow, this is creative and fun,
Yeah.
So whenever it comes to this film, it was definitely back and forth. I felt myself kind of being pulled in and pushed away by the film innately there. But yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably, we're kind of on par with our thoughts and beliefs, and obviously we'll dissect this more diving in. So I guess we probably should talk about the plot of FNAF. So it focuses on Mike, who is a dude down on his luck trying to take care of his little sister there, he's by himself, very hard pressed to get jobs, not getting a lot of money, being in a constant state of eviction from his home. Definitely down on his luck dude. And then, wouldn't you know it, a position opens for a security guard position at the Freddy Fazbear's pizza restaurant in town. And so he decides to take up the job, and that's whenever he starts to notice things aren't what they seem.
Yeah, it's a closed down restaurant, that is to say.
Yes,
they
yes.
explain to him that, like the owner, the guy that used to own this place is just sentimental, and, he just needs somebody to keep the hooligans from breaking in. Should be an easy job, right? But...
Yeah, and I think the plot is interesting to me because it's really hard. Like, obviously, you could dig into the FNAF lore and how, like, crazy and wild it is, especially with the theories thrown in and everything else. But it is definitely kind of tricky to turn the game into a plot, like just a story plot there.
I can tell definitely, even just watching like the timeline, I was like, this is so convoluted. And then the other half of the video that was explaining the timeline was like, I made half of this up because I'm just guessing that if this happened, then this should have, like, it's not, there's so much that's like, usually in these games, from what I could tell, you're just like keeping the bears out, like there's not that much like straight through line as much as there is a note here and a picture there,
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it is the fact that, Scott, whenever he created the original game, he would throw in like these like little hints and everything. And I mean, that's another reason we talked about why this, franchise blew up as it did, is because all of the like underlying story that was there and everything, because they mentioned small things like it's me in the first game, flashing it, and 1987 being a pivotal year and everything, just small little clues and everything else that got the internet together to basically try to piece a story together and just start talking about theories or what the story is. And while I think it is cool, you do kind of put yourself in a corner of like, oh man, as it continues on, it just starts weaving into a bigger, crazier, very much at times convoluted story. And so whenever it came to the plot of this film and the story and everything, I felt like they did the best they could, because there was a part of me that was like, man, they really should have stuck more to the Freddy Fazbear's building and everything. But at the same point, it's like, how much could they have done story-wise and everything else? Because, like, how long could you stretch it out? Because, One
normally you go home after you do a work shift instead of being stuck there for 5 nights.
And that's the other thing too, Yeah, it was. It's so bad I didn't even count, but I assume he was there for 5 nights.
I think so. Yeah. I was kind of keeping track, and I'm pretty sure by the end of the movie it was the 5th night. Yeah.
So that's actually smart and everything. So you do have to kind of do that. Not to mention building up your character and everything. Because one film that I felt like tried to beat Five Nights at Freddy's to the punch, pulling a similar thing, is this film called Willy's Wonderland. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Never heard of it.
It's a movie starring Nicolas Cage, and he's hired to be a janitor and clean up this pizza restaurant that has animatronics, but the animatronics are killing people.
Wow, that is exactly the plot. Yes.
Yeah, and that it was interesting to compare watching that film versus watching Five Nights at Freddy's and seeing how that compared and everything else. On the one hand, it's like I felt like Willy's Wonderland tried to keep directly to the animatronics, whereas Five Nights at Freddy's tried to do something I don't know about bigger and ambitious being the word, but they tried to do a bigger story, and a lot more psychological issues and everything, and emotional trauma that Mike is dealing with, which I think is good and interesting on paper. Execution wise, I don't know how to feel about it. I feel mixed. On the one hand, I don't feel like it's completely botched, but on the other hand, I don't think it's like, oh man, this hits me right in the feels.
Yeah, as somebody that's like not that close or connected to Five Nights at Freddy's and my nostalgia or whatever, like again, I remember it coming out, like I understand it, but yeah, I felt like in moments, like I got that initial, Five Nights at Freddy's flavor from the first game, and some of the jump scares and some of the beats, and then I also got some just like, this is some corny bad CGI stuff, you know what I mean? So I feel like this had moments where it was really hitting for me, but then other moments where I was like, that's just funny, But,
yeah, it was definitely kind of interesting, just seeing where everything went. And while I wouldn't say, I don't know, I'm just going to be straight up honest, not my favorite plot line of any movie of all time, but definitely far from the worst. I think it's just it does feel like a film that's been rewritten multiple times. Like they try to keep pieces of older scripts and try to,
you can kind of feel that like smoothed over. I don't want to say polished, because that maybe gives it like a perfect kind of flair, which it definitely doesn't, but it has like a sort of, whenever you go over a script that many times, it does have a feeling of like like you've rubbed down some parts into the sense where it's all smooth, but like maybe not as there's not as much teeth to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, another thing about it is I noticed a lot of cliches. Like I felt like there was a lot of tropey cliches, like, oh, it's like the part of the film where they're having fun, or oh, it's like the film where everything's bad.
Definitely a little cookie cutter.
Yeah, definitely cookie cutter is a good word for it. And I not that I expected to go into Five Nights at Freddy's expecting like Citizen Kane or some big masterpiece and everything.
Right.
I kept my intentions and expectations realistic with this film, but it was kind of like, okay, yeah, a little cookie cutter, but it did have moments that was like, I either enjoyed it because I'm like, oh, that's cool, or it was unbelievably goofy and cheesy.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel right there with you. Yeah, I know what you mean when you say cookie cutter, because this definitely could have had that sort of raw indie inspiration that like the first game had, where you can just feel it, you get the vibe, but it definitely has the sort of like Disney effect or the Marvel effect, where you can tell they've focused so many different people, different writers, different producers, different people looking at not just the script but the footage and the editing, so much so that it just becomes like a little sterile. A lot of the creativity gets lost, like looking at the original Star Wars versus like the new Disney Star Wars. It always comes back to Star Wars for me, right? But where you can tell where they're like, we need to make this mass appeal, you know what I mean? And you kind of lose a little bit of the charm and character. But I do feel like Five Nights at Freddy's as an IP just has so much charm and character to its literal characters, its animatronics, its identity,
that not all of that was lost, but I do feel like, it could have been a lot fresher than it was.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well. I think I feel like whenever it comes to video game adaptations, making Five Nights at Freddy's a movie is like far from the worst IP. It's pretty good and everything, but yeah, I would agree. It did feel kind of just like a little more like Hollywood film, as opposed to kind of having like that kind of again, that indie charm, I suppose, because like whether you like Five Nights at Freddy's or not, you can admit it's iconic and has a charm and everything. It's just like a good idea all around. It was just kind of Scott Cawthon struck gold when coming up with the IP.
Yeah,
and so now
because it's already familiar to everybody. We've all everybody that's alive today has been inside of a Chuck E. Cheese. We get the animatronic animals, and we get that they're a little creepy, and nobody had yet to seize on the horror aspect of that. Like he did. So, and I think that this is probably the first movie besides the one that you're mentioning, the first massively recognized movie that's capturing that.
I would definitely say so. I'm sure other films have attempted to do this previously and everything. There's even an SNL sketch where it had killer animatronics. Maryville Brothers. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I'll send you a link. I love it a ton. Also has Jim Carrey in it, so that also helps.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I feel like we could keep talking about the plot and everything, and we will come back to it, because obviously there's lots of turns and twist reveals, everything that definitely needs to be discussed.
They definitely like lace in a backstory, like the character Mike.
Yes, you're
Sorry,
good. You're
letter
all good.
M word. Mike is definitely. I mean, again, I haven't played all the games, so maybe they give the security guards more characterization later. But this seemed pretty based on the first one, and like the security guard doesn't really get a lot of backstory. But this one, I mean, they gave Mike a lot of reason to be there, a lot of reason to be thinking the thoughts he's thinking, and so it's interesting how they wove in his personal tragic background into the Five Nights at Freddy's. But
I thought that was actually a pretty good idea, because they could have easily not done that. But I think giving him some emotional grounds and charge to his character and everything, it's smart. Now, granted, I wouldn't say it's done masterfully, and he's like a character study that needs to be studied in all film classes. But Mike, played by Josh Hutcherson, did really good. And my wife, she went to go see the movie with us and everything. She was going on and on about Josh, and she's like, "Man, I haven't seen him in a lot of films lately." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? I don't recognize him." He's like, "Oh, he's PETA. I didn't even know that." And then apparently he's like in Zathura, Bridge to Terabithia.
Yeah, he was in a bunch of movies that, like, as a child actor.
So I had no idea. He was even there, but I felt like he did good. I felt like he was very competent at making me believe he is horribly traumatized by this accident that occurred whenever he was a young kid and everything. And the fact that there is times, I will say, where, especially towards the beginning of the film, he's like pretty much jaded and tired and everything because his sister is being a little punk and everything a lot of the time there. But you can also kind of sympathize that he wasn't prepared to kind of be a parental figure for her at all in that sense. So it was like a little like, okay. And then seeing how he develops through the movie, emotional trauma wise, I think it's pretty good, but whenever it comes to the chemistry between him and his sister, I felt like it just shifted a little too quickly, believably. But I think that's more of the sister's writing than it is his own writing. But I like what they did with him, especially just having that nightmare over and over again. I thought it would get repetitive and boring, but they made it actually a good device, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. As soon as because you kind of enter the first like nightmare he has pretty early, and I was like, is this gonna be a dream? Like, think about nightmares, and then is the animatronics real or not? Is he imagining it during his night shift? I thought we were going to get into some like really cheesy territory, but I do feel like they handled it pretty well. It's really hard to like do a good like movie that has a lot of dream sequences in it. I feel like personally,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I should say it's easy to become really cheesy and contrived.
Absolutely.
And this one did not do that. So which it easily could. Like half of the trailers that we watched looked like terrible movies that would do that.
Yeah.
So this one didn't. So congratulations.
Yeah, I felt like it was really good and it felt appropriate, and you know, I figured I would be tired of it, but again, it's just used as a good vehicle to move the plot forward and also kind of dissect Mike emotionally, because he's very much more of a reserved character.
Yeah.
Doesn't really say a whole lot about him and everything else. So I was genuinely surprised that he was a pretty good protagonist. Pretty good protagonist for this film there.
Yeah.
Nothing, amazing or groundbreaking, but it wasn't like, dude, I've had enough of this dude already. He would get, I think again, this kind of jumps into the cliche tropes you would see, and he kind of ends up falling in that line, and I'm like, we could talk about it more, but he just kind of like shifts again. Like, you understand where he's coming from, but at the same sense, it just all is like, I feel like I've seen this a billion times already.
Yeah, no, it definitely had the vibe of like, well, we have to make this movie like other movies,
Yes, exactly. But overall, I still believe Josh Hutcherson did a very, very good job.
Yeah.
His little sister, Abby, played by Piper Rubio. Again, I feel like she is written much worse than Mike on paper whenever it comes to it, but I think so.
She's
a little bit there.
She's like a kid. She's a kid with no parents.
Yeah.
She's, she doesn't remember things like the tragic backstory that involves her brother. She just knows that her brother's trying to take care of her. And he's not doing a very good job because he's a kid too. I mean, he's like in his 20s or whatever.
Yeah, I'm, and maybe it's just me. I feel like kids are kind of hard characters to write for because
they don't make sense.
Yes.
In real life.
Yeah.
Like to us sometimes. He's like, why won't she talk to me? She hates me. Whenever she's just like, she's also not going through a good time right now.
Yeah, and maybe that's kind of like my draw as to why I felt like she wasn't written as great. Granted, I don't think she's trash. No. Definitely not trash whatsoever, but definitely there were some moments where I felt like she was a little too eager at times to be connected to Mike and everything, considering how disconnected. But again, you are right in the sense, kids don't make sense. They're very chaotic beings and everything that'll jump back and forth.
I do think a lot of the story is obviously told from like Mike's perspective, and so he doesn't really get why she's not talking to him, why she doesn't want to eat, but she's depressed, what I mean? She doesn't have any parents and they're almost being evicted all the time, and she's being left alone constantly while her brother's working. It makes sense. I feel like they actually did a decent job in the beginning with the elementary school teacher or whatever grade she's in, teacher.
Yeah.
That they were doing a teacher conference, and Mike was like, Mike was like, I don't get it. She doesn't want to talk to me at all. And the teacher was like, she draws all the time, and you're in every single one of her drawings. Like, you're the world to her or whatever. She just doesn't know how to express it. So I felt like the plot of the movie wasn't so much like she's cold towards Mike and then warms up. It was like she doesn't know how to talk to him, and then she figures it out because they go through an experience together. You know what I mean?
Well, kudos to you, Aaron, for teaching me stuff, man. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Five Nights at Freddy's is a learning experience for all of us.
I know 5 nights of learning how to be a better sibling. Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't refute that. Like, there's not even like a, I don't think so. I think it's dumb.
No, I mean, I think it's valid.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
If you don't pick up on a little detail like that, then it definitely could color the rest of the movie like that. So it's a valid. It's always a valid criticism. We are first-time moviegoers, and this is our first-time experience. That's what I got out of it personally.
Yeah,
so it made sense to me. But
yeah, no, I think that's very valid. And again, I could see myself rewatching this in the future, and if I do, I'm definitely going to try to pay closer attention to there, because I do think him having a sister ends up being good for the plot story and everything Mike needs to go through to develop as a character as well. So I feel like she's good for that, as well as good for her, because again, it is nice, even though it was definitely kind of cheesy how it led up to them having that shared experience and everything else. But yeah, I think that's very valid. And so I think her just kind of being just a difficult child overall was definitely good move. Yeah, but at performance wise, I felt like Abby did fine. You know, I
she
think
did good. Yeah, it's hard to. It's hard to win an Oscar as a child actor, But
yes,
I think she did good. She was a cute little kid, and she served her purpose. But.
Yeah, I feel like that. It's definitely it's definitely hard. It's just hard to do a good performance, period. Let alone whenever you're just a little kid, and you
have to convey complicated emotions.
Yeah. So I felt like she did fine as Abby, as a little sister there, and I definitely would say I've changed my mind slightly on the opinion that I just spouted. So it's weird because it's like, no, I can't argue with that, man. Like,
she's kind of. A lot of kids that have like imaginary friends, like she seems to have in the beginning. They're isolated and they're depressed and they don't know how to talk to people, so they invent somebody that they know how to talk to because it's in their brain or whatever. So I feel like that's sort of who Abby is supposed to be in the beginning, and you kind of learn more about her as the movie goes on.
Yeah, and I do think it is good that she is written on being very introverted like that, because it makes the experiences she has later more believable, that she would be more cool to these ideas as opposed to not cool with them. One character, and I don't know, maybe you could change my mind about this one.
Probably not.
Yeah, is the officer you meet later in the film, Vanessa, played by Elizabeth Lale.
She's has a very interesting introduction where her character and her motives just don't make any sense.
No.
They feel like it's a really shoot-in, like, love interest or something in the beginning. And, like, while watching the movie, I did feel the least, like, I was like, who is this character? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why are you here? But by the end of it, I had, like, warmed up to her intentions and motivations a little bit more, just as you learn more as you go through the movie. But, like, yeah, no, initially, for, like, a good half of the movie that she's in it, I'm like, what the fuck is this person?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel as well. I felt like she definitely needed another comb over or 12, basically.
Yeah, she she definitely appears like no rational person would see this person hanging out with you all the time. Like, I'm just a police officer. I'm just going to hang out here for 8 hours and chill with you on your shift. And just lets you want to dance. You know, it's just like, it just feels like they were trying to shove in like a romance subplot or something.
Dude.
And like nobody in real life would just be like welcome to that. They'd be like, what are you doing here? I gotta call my boss about this because there's just a cop here for my whole shift, and she's messing with the tickets, and I don't know. This seems like it should be my job to keep this woman out. Like,
yeah, and like, oh my gosh, you mentioned the line, but that was one line that killed me. Is like, obviously. Spoilers, there's animatronics in this film. Whenever she presses the show button and they all start dancing and everything, she's like, wanna dance or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just like, what is this?
Exactly.
If a police officer just came up, pressed a button and said wanna dance, I would be speechless. And then, like, whenever the show stops prematurely and everything, she's like, maybe next time. I'm like, what is this line and everything? The lines she's given and stuff don't make sense. And then towards the latter half of the film, they do start trying to ground her character as more about her character is revealed and everything there.
But
like,
for most of the movie, I'm just like, do you not have a job? Like, I know you're a police officer, but what are you doing here?
She the stuff she does, and I'm like, how good of a police officer are you actually?
No,
that
terrible.
Like, it just genuinely was baffling how much stuff is done, and so it's like moments
where she just throws medication into an open waterway.
Yes.
That seems like the thing you're supposed to prevent as a police officer.
Yeah, like, it just, like, I get it's supposed to be, like, symbolic or whatever. At the same point, though, what the hell?
If anybody should know, you should know that there's a special way to destroy medication.
And it's
Don't
just
flush them.
I don't. It's like the character on paper is a good idea, but it's just as soon as they started fleshing it out, they really started getting it misshapen.
Right. Well, she's interesting because I believe I was talking with Laura in the car about this because my girlfriend went and saw it with us. I mean, she's like a real character in the Security Breach games, right? She's like a real person in these games.
Yeah, I haven't played Security Breach yet.
And I don't think her character in this movie really like super relates to.
Yeah, she is.
But yes,
right there.
Vanessa is the security guard in the Security Breach games that's trying to find the kid or whatever that you play as in those games. So that's her character in this game, but she doesn't really serve the same role. She's a cop. She's not the security officer. So she's like a character in the games. If you play the games, you'll be like, yeah, oh yeah, Vanessa. But she's not that Vanessa as far as I could tell. Again, I don't know the intricate lore, so maybe it is the same person. But
there's theories. Lots of theories. That's all
theories.
I'll say. Okay,
about the cameo, can we?
Dude, okay, like we'll put a pause on Vanessa to talk about the cameo, because they're at a restaurant and everything. This different group of characters is, and I heard this voice and I was like, man, that sounds familiar, but I just like glazed over it. And then once it showed MatPat's face from Game Theory there
as the server of the restaurant.
God, it was good. It was a good moment. I felt like that was a good cameo.
That was so good. I want to spoil his line because I liked it so much.
Yeah, go ahead.
He was like, he was talking. They were like, we don't want to eat anything. He's like, really? They say lunch is the most important meal of the day, and they're like, I thought that said breakfast. They said breakfast, and he's like, well, that's just a theory.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was definitely the Leonardo meme then, pointing at the screen.
Yeah,
it was said the line.
It's so good. Like, they could have easily just had to be like, oh, here's your food and leave it, but just giving him that line and everything, I'm like, that's fun.
So corny, but like
it's
that's
fine.
The kind of corny I signed up for.
But at the same point, I feel like, it could, like, you know how sometimes they do cameos and you feel like you're getting your face rubbed in?
Yeah.
I felt like this was like halfway in between,
almost
there, but it didn't go too far.
Right.
It was just enough.
It was like, it was super hammed up. I'll give it that, but it wasn't like bad, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Like, it was like, it was a little bit of wink and nudge, but it wasn't like straight up Jim looking at the camera, you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. But that was a really, really, really fun cameo there. Another spoiler to talk about, because I know you had mentioned it before in the intro to this episode about Markiplier, and unfortunately he was not able to make it to this film.
Rip.
Yes, very much ripperoni. He's busy on his movie Iron Lung, and so he wasn't able to make it work due to scheduling conflicts. But Scott's like, I hope that this film gets a sequel so that way we can have the King of FNAF appear.
Get Mark in there, man.
So that was disappointing, but at the same point, it's like, it didn't feel like, where's the Markiplier cameo there? I felt like just getting MatPat was just like enough of a wink and a nudge.
No, that was great. Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely fun cameo. I might even dare to say it's one of my favorite cameos I've seen in any film, just because of the context.
Yeah, no, it's pretty great. And I mean, there's been some films recently that have put in like popular YouTube and Twitch personalities, and like almost universally, I thought it was cringe.
Yes,
but this was pretty good. Yeah.
Yes, it was a good balance between cringed and based.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those are the two levels. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, talking about Vanessa, I don't know how much we can say about her character and everything, but I felt like the love interest was definitely shoot in. However, I am glad that they didn't like completely put gas on the love pedal and everything, because it seemed at first once you see her,
right? I was afraid.
Yes, how fast it was going.
Bad, but there's a lot of things that like in this movie generally where I'm like, oh, are they gonna do this? That would suck. And then they don't. And so like overall my opinion of it is still fairly positive, but yeah, there's just definitely some moments that make you scared, and not in a horror way, in a oh god, are they gonna do this kind of way. Yeah,
it's just, man, it's just kind of like there are moments that make you question her as a police officer,
Yeah.
which I don't know if they're ever addressed as to why she like for
It was-
a particular decision.
It was so bad that part of me was wondering, I was like, is it going to be revealed that she's not a police officer? She's like just bought a used police car and a
Yes.
uniform to like pretend to be here, because I was like, this character's motivations are so strange to me.
Yeah.
But they do make sense as the movie goes on.
Yeah, definitely weird. But yeah, we'll probably have to just return to her once we're really into spoiler territory
Yeah.
and everything. But the other character that did receive one of the top billings, of course, is Matthew Lillard playing Steve Rackland, the career counselor
Yeah.
there. And you know, Matthew Lillard, I think he's it's so funny watching his journey about, like, you know, he was like in Scream as Stu,
Right.
and then ended up being Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo film,
Mhm.
and then you don't hear too much about him, and then he just explodes with like memes and everything, and now he's like just made such a big appearance.
He's had this like sort of cult following against like alt culture kind of people for a long time. Like I remember one of my good friends, Jordan, his sister is like the kind of person that makes like horror dolls and stuff, and she just loved Matthew Lillard ever since she was, I don't know, 12 or something. Like ever since I've known Jordan, she's loved it. So I just feel like with the younger generations, it's like, I don't know, discovering Scream and Scooby-Doo and stuff, they just he's got a cult following as an actor, and I'm sure that'll just grow now that he's in the FNAF movie. But
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, again, we can't talk about his character entirely much, but his introduction, he's just fun.
Yeah.
You could tell he's having a blast.
I just love him as an
Yes.
actor. Yeah.
He's genuinely having fun, and therefore, because you could tell he's having fun and everything, you're having fun as well. Because they could have just made this so, like, by the numbers and everything. Because, again, his character kind of serves as a plot device to get Mike to work the security guard shift at Five Nights at Freddy's. at Freddy Fazbear's. But they give him a lot to work with. Like, he gets to throw in his charm, his quirk, and everything. A couple of good funny lines and everything. So it was fun seeing him in the film. I really enjoyed him, and I won't talk about all of his scenes and everything, but just intro wise, I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Granted, I was surprised that, you know, again, we didn't see him too much afterwards. Yeah, that's why I was just kind of like, okay, he's gone for a bit, but at the point I didn't feel like, oh, where's the career counselor? Where is he in all this?
Exactly, yeah.
So it was definitely kind of weird initially being like, oh, Matthew Lillard, and oh, there he goes.
Right,
sort
because
of
he does,
thing.
I mean, he does play a pretty, like, he is like in a lot of the beginning of the movie, because he's trying to get this job at Freddy's, and at first he's like, no, I don't want to work there, and then, you know, there's a little bit of back and forth, so I was like, yeah, it's a big name actor, he's probably going to be in a lot of this movie, but yeah, you don't, as the movie goes on, you really don't see a whole lot of him.
Yeah, but at the same point, I feel like plot point wise and stuff, there wasn't a necessity to shoehorn him in everything.
Yeah.
So I feel like overall, he was probably my favorite actor to watch, but it's hard to beat.
No, it's like watching like Willem Dafoe or like
Yes.
Samuel L. Jackson or so. You can't just like anytime they're on screen, you're just like, hey, I like this guy.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And so I'm definitely glad they were able to get him to join this production. Definitely really cool to get a fairly big actor's name into the film. And yeah, definitely have to talk more about his later appearances and everything. One character that I did also think was a lower end of the writing thing is Aunt Jane, played by Mary Stuart Masterson.
Yes.
She might be the worst written character.
She's pretty one-dimensional.
Yes, very one-dimensional.
She's like the Disney villain that wants to separate the family, you know.
Yeah, because basically she's wanting to gain custody of Abby, but at the same point she makes it very clear that she doesn't have any purity. Like, she is just like, she might as well have had like a cat she was stroking in her lap or something to amplify her villainous side and everything. So I understand why she's in the film, because it's supposed to be another antagonistic force going against our main protagonist and everything. But it was like, oh my god, this is unbelievable.
And it is kind of the push to make Mike take a job that he wouldn't normally take, because he's like, I have to like have a job before this family court hearing, or the judge is gonna take my sister away from me.
So I get it. Plot wise, I get it and everything.
She's just
But on the one hand, it's so one-dimensional. On the other hand, I think it would have been worse if they tried to make her grounded and like she wants to help out, as opposed to she just basically wants the extra money from the government.
I agree. Yeah. If they tried to make her any more like sympathetic, then you might be like, okay, well, just give the daughter. Don't stop working at Freddy's, dude. Just give Abby over. You know what I mean? But then so you kind of have to make her mean, and then she kind of has to be in the story to like push him along. But it's just an unfortunate thing of like, there's a way to write around this character. There's other motivations you can give. Like, she doesn't need to exist, but she does, and every scene she's in, she's just like trying to make a Dalmatian fur coat or whatever. She's
yes, that's exactly. I literally felt like she was like the Cruella de Vil of the film. But I think it's even funnier because I think even the lawyer she hires is aware that she's absolutely malevolent
and she
and
hires
just
this
evil.
little egg-shaped man of a lawyer that she could just boss around. She's like, "Shut up, Tom. Now, are we going to murder these kids or what?" Like,
It definitely was like that, and I think like for the sake of the film, I get it. I did not go into Five Nights at Freddy's expecting, again, character studies.
Sure, yes.
Per se. But it was definitely jarring on how villainous she was.
True.
For just being like, again, an ad. But again, I guess she really wants that extra $1,000 a month. I guess.
I guess so.
I guess.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, and man, I don't know what else to say about it.
No,
like, there's nothing else I could say.
She's...
Yes, I'm sure we'll talk about her again in spoilers briefly.
Sure,
Everything whenever she inevitably rears her ugly head again. Aside from that, though, was there any other characters you wanted to talk about besides the animatronics?
I don't think so. I mean, the animatronics are really some of the big focus.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's really not.
Yeah, I will say, this is actually confirmed by Jason Blum, who, is the owner of Blumhouse Studios and the producer of this film. A majority of the budget went towards the animatronics because the animatronics were created by Jim Henson Studios.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, for real.
It's so funny because they feel so... I was like, I wish they used more practical effects on them because a lot of it does feel a little CGI, but...
Yeah, I felt like the eyes were definitely CGI
100%,
there a bit, but as is, I'm kind of almost the opposite. I'm surprised they didn't use more CGI, and they, for the most part, try to stick solely to the suits for scares. Minus a few scenes, of course, but like whenever the animatronics are actually chasing down people and everything. So, because I think the animatronics, I mean, I could be wrong. I believe that's the main reason why everybody is going to see this film is because of the animatronics, because it's important.
Those are the strongest parts of the IP, I feel like.
And it is difficult because, again, like, whenever you look at the animatronics, I haven't played all the Five Nights at Freddy's games or read all the books or everything else, so it's kind of hard to know what personalities they have, not to mention the fact of who and what they are.
Right.
But I felt like it was just cool getting to see real life, creations of like characters that were made very cheaply in the indie game and everything, how they translated to real life.
Right.
So, and obviously a lot of it is mostly like people in suits and everything moving around there. But there's quite a few shots there where, again, I was like, man, they look really like animatronics. They do a very good job with that. So
pretty robotic.
I definitely, again, I think it was very smart that they spent all their money on the animatronics, because if the animatronics had sucked or looked terrible or something, that definitely kind of would have made the film less interesting.
Yeah, no, you definitely got to pour a lot of the budget into that.
Because I definitely felt like they were true, faithful recreations of the animatronics you see in the games and everything. So I felt like it was very important they nailed that aspect down. And yeah, I will say, this could be just me, I felt like there wasn't enough of them, but at the same point with the story they told, there wasn't a lot of moments that I could think like, oh, you need to put them here. But again, it's complicated. It was weird, the story they were trying to tell, how I could shoehorn more of the scenes.
Right.
So I felt like as is, they did the best they could, and who knows, maybe it's best to leave us wanting more, as opposed to being like, man, can we see anything else whatsoever besides these damn animatronics? I feel like people are going to be happy because each animatronic gets an equal amount of screen time. I don't feel like they favor Freddy, even though the film's named after him and everything. But it's really cool, and it is hard to kind of like, given that they're just robots moving around, give them their own quirky personalities and stuff, because especially just given how they are in games and everything else, it's definitely interesting how they try to translate that, because one of the things is in the game, Foxy ends up running towards the security room. That's like one of his main things he does is he runs down a hallway super quick. And you do get that moment there where he runs on the hallway, and I was like, okay, that's awesome they did that. Like, they really did think about the game and, like, what to kind of bring to the movie, like, certain aspects.
And those sorts of moments I felt like really reflected the charm of the games more so than a lot of the other moments you get with them.
Yes.
Where they were, like, reenacting the jump scares or those sorts of things they did in the game, and you see them on the security cameras or whatever. Like, that's when it was at its creepiest and spookiest and captured that horror charm, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely surprised there wasn't too many references to the original game, because I was expecting like, oh man, are they going to do this, are they going to do that, or whatever, but really they didn't. I wouldn't say it was like it hurt the film not including those references there, because I felt like they included enough references as is. But it definitely was cool getting to see, like, oh yeah, that's like the game. Yeah. You know, I think that's the important thing of a video game adaptation, is that you make them feel like the game.
Yeah. And a lot of times video game adaptations can lean too heavily into it, where the whole movie is like just the game. But I kind of appreciated that this had a decent balance. I do feel like it was a little more movie than it was game, you know what I mean?
Yes, I would agree.
But something like, I don't know, if you're a Super Mario movie lover, I apologize, but like that movie, the one that just came out, I felt like was like all references and almost no plot, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I was like, I mean, I like the references, I love the Super Mario Brothers, but, you know, it's just like I kind of wanted to watch a movie, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And the actual movie here, the plot kind of is really basic and sucks. But for Five Nights at Freddy, I felt like the plot was like interesting enough and engaging enough that it like kept me going. And then I was craving just a little bit more of that like game feel, like. But overall, the moments they did give you, I felt like were cool.
Yeah, I mean, and they definitely make sure to include other stuff there. Like, they have the exact same poster in the security room that's in the original game, the fan as well. And then, you know, seeing the security cams, like, there is a couple of shots where they do look at it. Granted, they don't focus on it too much, but again, I feel like they did just enough, being like, yep, let's just make it feel like the game and everything. Right. Even having almost exact same screenshots as they do in the game, showing certain aspects of the pizzeria there. I just realized we moved kind of from animatronics to talking about the setting and everything. So
natural transition.
Yeah, I know, natural transition, but I feel like that's a natural one to go to again, because I don't think there's anything else to mention about the animatronics currently.
Yeah.
But that I really liked Freddy Fazbear's the setting and everything. I believed that it's an actual pizza parlor. And you know, it's cool seeing arcade games, seeing kind of how it is whenever you turn the lights on and everything, how it was, even seeing like an old VHS tape kind of showing like
Yeah.
how it was back in its heyday.
Yeah, they made like an 80s instructional training video that I thought was a nice touch. But
Yeah, definitely just good ideas all around to kind of expand the whole idea of, Freddy Fazbear's, being a pizza restaurant. Definitely really cool to kind of see the setting come to life, basically. I felt like enough attention and detail went into it, but I don't know. It was like... I'm trying to think. It wasn't like immediately captivating, like, oh, I love everything about it. But it's
Right.
like, it's real solid. It's real good. I like you can see the prize counter where they have the arcade ball pit, and like getting to see like the kitchen where all the pizza boxes are at.
It's definitely one of those things where it's like such an iconic place, but also like it's so dark and dingy that you don't get to see a lot of it at once. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So it's like, I do think they did a good job, but yeah, it was hard to just like see the whole map IRL on the movie theater and be like, yeah, because it's like the lights are out and flickering half the time, so you're not usually seeing all of it,
But I definitely think they also did a good job, which again, that was another important aspect, is Freddy Fazbear's building itself. I mean, if there was one aspect they could not afford to screw up on the movie, it was the animatronics and Freddy Fazbear's pizza
because those are the
place.
two great
Yeah.
things to make a movie off of from this IP is the building and the animatronics. So those are the two things you gotta nail, because that's the benefit of making the Five Nights at Freddy's movies.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Aside from that, what did you think? Because again, the film is PG-13. How did you feel for a PG-13 film they handled the horror aspect?
I felt like they did pretty good, because you can't just like show, intense gore and stuff, but you gotta show some. It's gotta be a tricky thing to do, because you're a movie director, you're appealing to the studios and what they want, and they're probably a bunch of old men that don't know what Five Nights at Freddy's is. It's got to be hard to be like, yes, this movie is for children, but it's also a movie about killing people, because the Markiplier audience is like 11-year-olds, and that's who's going to watch this movie. But also it has to be horror, because it's a horror game and it's horrific. So that's got to be a challenging balance to do. But I do feel like they did a good job of like showing enough horror without, getting it a rating that parents wouldn't let their kids go see it.
Yeah. I felt like it was really good balance of it. And I think because, again, it's just, there's not, the film is not a constantly a horror film.
Yeah, it's really not.
It has horror elements to it, but I feel like that was the only way for this to get a PG-13.
Right.
With, like, I'd rather there be fewer moments and intense the scariness of the scenes as opposed to diluted entirely.
Yeah. I do feel like it led to a couple of like corny scenes, but yeah, we could talk about those in spoilers.
Yeah, definitely some scenes. It's definitely kind of interesting, kind of like how some of like the horror translated, whether it was like real life animatronic horror to nightmare horrors.
True.
So that was kind of like interesting to kind of see play it out. But as is, I mean, I feel like this film is appropriately scary enough for the targeted audience.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I think they did a good job there, because I feel like we've gotten to a point with horror movies, especially where they try too hard to make it violent, bloody, and gory and scary and everything, that it kind of just loses the charm of it there. So I feel like there's definitely an art to the gore and horror. So I felt like it was fairly scary enough, but I would also, like, if I had kids, that were like, preteens, something like that, I would be fine with taking them to this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd agree. Yeah, it'd definitely be one of those things like, wow, this Freddy Fazbear fellow. Let me look at the reviews. Let me see if this is appropriate for you, little Johnny. Let me watch the movie ahead of time, and I'll let you know. And if I did, I would probably, if they were 10 or older or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, it's fine, go watch it.
Yeah, that's fine, because, like, even whenever it does have some challenging scenes, A, I'm glad they're in there,
Right.
but B, it's super brief and everything.
Yeah, they don't hold on things too long. The movie overall, the scare factor is, like, fairly minimal for a horror movie. And yeah, there's not a lot of the things you find in some horror movies that are rated R, like sexual violence or threats of that, or some more complicated themes. There isn't just boobies everywhere like you see in some slasher films or whatever. It's so it's like it really is just this. There's not widespread drug use or complicated themes. There's really not even that much profanity. It really is just animatronics killing people. But
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that. One other aspect I do have to hit on is music is either hit or miss, whether we feel like we need to talk about it or there's nothing. That's what I'm talking about, man. Because that without spoiling anything, they played that song in the movie, and I'm just like I'm jamming out immediately.
Yeah.
And it was placed perfectly.
Yeah, it was the right spot for it.
It was definitely in the right spot for it, but it was cool, again, seeing another thing that kind of just, celebrated Five Nights at Freddy's, the Living Tombstones song rendition, Five Nights at Freddy's, like that just became super popular, and it's honestly a catchy jam.
It is a jam.
So it was cool to see that make its way into the movie. So that was pretty sick. Is there anything else we want to talk about before getting into spoilers? I know we're kind of hitting that point where we can't say too much without revealing the whole...
I don't think so. I mean, we haven't talked specifically about special effects and stuff, but we talked about it when we were talking about the animatronics and everything.
Yeah, anything else about the special effects?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything really special to note on in terms of, like, editing or cinematography. It's like a movie that came out in 2023. Imagine what the cinematography looks like. You got it.
Yes, that's fair. I definitely don't feel like they did anything crazy with the cinematography. It's just good cinematography.
Yeah, it's just like they were making a movie. That's not the aspect they were focused on. There's nothing of note. There wasn't any, like, major editing blunders for me or anything like that. Just a few kind of cheesy special effects moments, but overall, especially when they're using practical effects and stuff, and showing the arcade and all the insides of the buildings and the security room and all that. I mean, I do feel like they did a pretty good job effect-wise.
Yeah.
I just even like sound design-wise, I don't think there was much to note on. I felt like the animatronics sounded kind of cool, but there were a lot of game noises and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it was cool. Again, this kind of harkens back to that's in a video game, but having Foxy's dum 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 dum. Like it was cool getting to hear their animatronic noises. Granted, I didn't hear like too many. I'm surprised they didn't utilize it more, but
I feel like it's hard because some of what makes that like scary, the sort of funny scary that you get from a lot of the Five Nights at Freddy's kind of games is it's because it's like silent. When you're sitting in the security room silent, and then you hear the dum dum or whatever, or you hear a noise somewhere. But as much they tried to use silence as much as they could in this film, but it's really just not. It's hard to make a movie just like with no background noise. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So there wasn't as many of those scary moments. It didn't feel like oh, I'm in Freddy Fazbear's and I'm scared for my life. I didn't feel that as much as I wanted to. But overall, I mean, I feel like they did a good job.
Yeah. I know you gave a lot of your points already and stuff. I don't really honestly have anything else
Me neither.
to say about it. So how about we jump to that rating?
Yeah. Just a summary of some of my points. I do feel like some of the characters really put up question marks above your heads as you watch them until the end of the movie, and not in a good way. Not in a, like, what's this character up to? But like more like, what the fuck's this character's problem? It's the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I feel like it's never going to be a 10 out of 10, but it's also never going to be a 0 out of 10. So it's, honestly, the way they did it, the way they handled it, it might be a little too polished in some parts, and not in like a movie perfection way, but just in like a, they scrubbed some of the original creativity out of the way. For me to give it like at a massively high score, but I feel like they did a good enough job. The IP was well represented enough, and honestly, the story was interesting and engaging enough, even though it was a little by the numbers at parts, or for the majority of it, besides one really wacky thing that happened in the middle that we'll talk about in spoilers. So, all that being said, I would give the Five Nights at Freddy's movie a 6 out of 10.
Oh,
6 out of 10.
Okay.
I felt like it was an above average viewing experience. It was a pretty good movie. It's not trash. I mean, we watched so many trailers, even from the same studio, of movies that I was like, I would never watch that movie. That looks awful. But no, this one's pretty good, especially by horror movie standards, and especially by video game movie standards. I feel like if we were rating this on the scale of like video game movies, it would be like a 9 out of 10. If we were rating this on the scale of like what the Five Nights at Freddy's movie could be, it's like a 8 out of 10, you know what I mean? But on a standard movie scale, it's like a 6 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I had a wild journey trying to figure out what to rate this film, because there's times in the film where I'm like, man, there's not a lot happening right now.
True.
It's just by the numbers, storytelling and everything. But then it delivers on the moments the fans are really ready and wanting and everything. And I felt like they delivered it very well. There are scenes that push me away and pull me in, as I said. It's definitely kind of a back and forth sort of thing. There's one scene in particular that I just couldn't stop laughing at because of how, like, is this really happening right now? And I can't even comprehend what to think or do. But at the same point, I'm kind of also, I think it's hysterical they included it. I'm on, like, I was so close to rating it, especially because of title, rating it 5.5 and everything. I rate for every night in Five Nights at Freddy's 5, but I don't know. It's wavering between 5.5 and a 6 as well for me. It's just wavering back and forth because I think, again, I try to be the mix of critical and fan and everything. Because I do agree, this is a good adaptation of the Five Nights at Freddy's film. I definitely, with a lot of the video game adaptations I have seen, it definitely could have botched it. They could have absolutely missed the point about what makes it special and everything. But I felt like they didn't. I felt like they did a really good job, and even though they spent a long time cooking up the film, I definitely feel like this one's good. This one's good. Yeah. It's a fun movie. Like, I was laughing at multiple parts, both because of good and bad things. But for the sake of syncing things up and everything, I'll be generous and move it up to a 6 out of 10 for me as well. I could definitely see myself rewatching it. In fact, I probably will buy it whenever it comes out on 4K. Especially got to keep supporting the format and everything. But it's good. I mean, if you're a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, you're already seeing the movie. Yeah. Like, there's no if and or buts. If you're not a fan of the movie, I think you'll find it just fine. Yeah. I think that's the overall thoughts about it. Because, again, I know there's been that massive gap between the critics bashing the movie and audience members praising the movie. Right. But I feel like, for me, I'm just kind of right in the middle. I'm like, I really like it. I think they do a lot of stuff. And it makes me excited if they do move forward making a sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like if you don't know anything about Five Nights at Freddy's, but you like horror and fun movies and you are intrigued by the idea, you probably will be like, wow, that's really cool. The robots and shit and what they did with them. Because it'll be a novel idea to your little brain. I would recommend it. But if you're familiar with Five Nights at Freddy's and you just don't care for the franchise, you might not like this movie.
That's fair. Yeah. This is not. I don't think this is going to win anybody that dislikes Five Nights at Freddy's over. Yeah. Definitely not. But for somebody like me, where I do like Five Nights at Freddy's, I was perfectly satisfied with the film. Yeah. Which is good. It's good that I didn't feel completely disappointed.
I would even encourage you to watch it if you are just like, you're familiar with Five Nights at Freddy's, but you don't really have an opinion on it. Like, I go watch this movie. Just go watch it.
Okay, awesome. So, yep, general good vibes from this film overall, ratings wise. There, I know I wavered between 5.5 and 6. Probably going to say, Regis, I'm going to choose 6. 6. Yes. Is that your final answer? Yes, exactly. But yeah, how about we talk about the first spoiler to be had, the first slice of the spoiler we're cutting out with our pizza cutter.
Yeah, okay, sure. How about the nightmares?
Yes.
That
Ooh.
Joshy boy has, Mr. Mike.
Mhm.
Mike, no last name given. Yeah. So his nightmare is about his brother got abducted as a child, and he was supposed to be watching him when they were out in the woods camping. And he every night his like big thing is that he takes some sleeping pills and he puts himself back into this form of like where he was that day in the forest, and he tries to remember all the details of who and the car that took his brother so that he can find him one day. That's his big goal, the big character development for this guy that gets slowly revealed. And it kind of motivates the entire movie. So very interesting that they cut all that in when there's already kind of like lore and shit for Freddy Fazbear's, and they kind of made this like, oh, actually it was William Afton the whole time that stole his brother. Now you get your revenge.
Yeah, I'm definitely, whenever it came to the nightmares, I'm surprised how deep they decided to go with. Now, granted, it did feel kind of by the numbers, because it was like a moment of like, because these kids keep appearing in his dreams and everything, and they turn out to be the kids who were killed at Freddy Fazbear's years ago.
Yeah.
And so whenever it came to that, I felt like it was a good plot device for him to try to unravel the mystery, because otherwise, if you didn't have like the kids and everything, you wouldn't learn that much about it, as well as Abby also contributing to like solving the mystery, because I guess she's able to communicate with them and everything. But I felt like it was definitely a good way to emotionally develop Mike in the film, because it's kind of like revealed further on why he's so obsessed on his little brother who got abducted and everything. And there's even a challenging point one of the ghost kids make, is saying like, you don't want to figure out who killed him, you just want your family back.
Right.
That's what this is all about, that you think you're going to get a sense of closure.
Which I do think is really interesting sort of conflict point that they did tie in later, where like he kind of gets what he wanted, where he was like, yeah, you can have this dream every night and be with your family again, and it can be real for you, but we're going to take your sister. And for a minute he's like, yes, and then he remembers that he loves his sister, and he's like, oh wait, no, this is the person. If I did that, then I'd be making a mistake. I'd be letting another kid get kidnapped, letting my other sibling get kidnapped, because I'm so obsessed with my first brother that has left us.
Yeah, because I mean, I think plot-wise, it's set up good as to why he would be upset, because that kind of marked the end of his childhood and everything, because his mom ended up dying, and supposedly, I got this implication, his dad took his own life after he lost his mom.
Yeah, they didn't like say it, and I wonder if they were trying to skirt ratings or something. Or yeah, it sounded like his dad killed himself after his mom died, or at least just fled.
Yeah, and just feeling like you kind of screwed up. Like, you were supposed to keep an eye on him.
Right, so all the guilt is now on him, when obviously the parents felt all that guilt too, and that's why they killed themselves.
And I'm happy they didn't do kind of like what It did, kind of like making him like openly bashing him, saying like, this is your fault, you were supposed to watch me.
Right.
Again, that could have been another tropey moment that we've seen in a lot of films
there,
but I felt like it was handled very well. I honestly liked the dream sequences way more than I thought it would, especially with the kids, and you could tell which kid is who there, because it's like the kid who got stuffed into Bonnie's suit has like paper bunny ears, and then the one in Foxy has like a little hanger in his hand.
Yeah, and Chica's like wearing yellow, and she's got like blonde pigtails.
And then Freddy Fazbear has like a little paper hat on. And meanwhile, Golden Freddy, as revealed, has blonde hair.
Yeah, blonde hair and a yellow striped shirt. Yeah,
doing that. I liked the idea. I felt like the kids were interesting because they did change the lore from the actual confirmed video game lore, but I don't feel like they were bad changes necessarily, because I feel like it would have been hard to translate the game's lore into a narrative for a film.
I'm not as familiar with that part of the lore, so I'm not sure what they changed, but
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that's brought up, because basically they made I don't know. Like, that's just me. It's always a constant balance between the souls are kind of like more pure innocent that are just trying to look for revenge against William Afton, whereas this film, they don't know who William Afton is and everything, and they just like, want more friends.
Right, and they're kind of being, whenever, this film kind of coats it as like, whenever they're being violent, William Afton's controlling them, but otherwise they're just innocent kids and like trapped in these costumes.
Yeah, and then in lore-wise, William Afton doesn't use the kids control-wise. Like, he killed the kids and then stuffed the bodies and everything. But it is revealed later that the spirits did come back to haunt him.
And that's, I wish that these spirits were a little more haunty, honestly. I really wish they had like a Sixth Sense vibe. The ghosts in Sixth Sense are like kind of terrifying to the kid, but then he like overcomes that to like help them and realize that they're just trapped here or whatever. I really wish it was kind of like that, where, you know, you're seeing ghosts in a dream, and it's like, there's like little moments where you can probably interpret it as kind of scary, where like he turns around and they're all gone or whatever, but like, I don't need them to be like, ooh, like blood running through their face. I don't need them to be corny scary, but I wish they just had, I wish they were just eerie. They weren't really eerie, they were just kind of helpful.
Yeah, the only one I felt like they tried to make ominous was the kid who stuffed into the Golden Freddy outfit.
Yeah, was that the one? Because there was one that had like blood coming from their eyes or
something. I think that might have been the Foxy kid.
Oh yeah, whatever. Oh yeah, because it has an eye patch on.
Yes, yeah, he has like the hanger hook, and then he scratches the arm, and then that's whenever he screams that his eyes are bleeding. That was cheesy.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cheesy. It did establish like, when he gets hurt in the dreams, he gets hurt in real life, which happens later. Like, it's presumably the animatronics hurting him while he's sleeping.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. Which, I mean, I think that's definitely nifty, because, like, again, it kind of personifies that the souls are getting closer to him, like, in the real world, as well as the spiritual world. So I think that's a cool idea. And then it's not just like, oh, you get hurt in your dreams, you get hurt for real.
If you die in your dreams, you die in real life.
Not Nightmare on Elm Street rules, but
at the same time, I just wish you could have done that better, because I do like the way they did the kids. I just, in the dreams, and then they sort of incorporate them in the actual Freddy Fazbear's too, where you can see them running sometimes. But I just really wish they had started out with like maybe just one of the kids, and like then they cut to the animatronic looking at him through the door or something, and then, you know, and they just kind of like sneak it in and make it more eerie, and then later he realizes they're all friendly whenever they're playing with Abby or whatever. I didn't get enough time being scared of the animatronics, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. They had moments where they were really trying to amplify the horror aspect of them, but there was times that, again, I just was more so laughing, because, again, it is it's hard to kind of make them creepy, but like the video game does it well. But then again, it's because it's like a micromanaging sort of game, and just seeing it pop up just more instills like, danger.
Right.
Everything. Meanwhile, I'm just laughing, especially because I felt like the filmmakers had fun, especially with one scene where Bonnie and Chica are just glaring at the camera.
Yeah. They're just looking, and then they send the little thing through the vent, and then they look.
Yeah, they send Cupcake through the vent.
Those just look kind of cheesy, because like they just looked. But I felt like I don't know. I feel like almost if they were more robotic whenever they looked. But their eyes just look like Family Guy eyes. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it was making me laugh. They're just squinting. These perfectly circular eyes with these. I was like, Peter Griffin's just looking at the camera.
Yeah. I felt it's just one of those things that I think that's one of the things that unfortunately doesn't translate as well into real life as it does in the video game, but it's still fun. And plus, they do stare at the camera in the video game. There's times where you're checking the camera and they're just staring right at you. So
but it's like but you flash to the camera and they're staring. This one they showed them like look at the camera, like move and look, and I just feel like it wasn't as scary. I felt like if it like I don't know, glitched out or something, and then they were just looking. And so it looks, you couldn't see them move. That's part of what makes it scary, because they're not supposed to move, and then they're suddenly closer to you or whatever.
Yeah,
there wasn't as much as that as there was just like they're moving.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that aspect. Definitely not as scary as it could have been, but again, that could have also just been them being afraid of pushing an R for the rating there. But as is, I still, I'm a fan of the nightmare sequences. I felt like they weren't too terribly corny. Like, I felt like they were very well used.
Yeah.
So I give major props for them kind of taking that aspect that could have just been another deemed corny trope and everything, and they actually did a pretty good job with it. I also like how, again, they're like one of the reveals, because they mentioned like William Afton is the one that kidnapped and killed his brother, which I will say is like a little, it's like one of those things like, well, what was William doing all the way, because I'm assuming it was in Nebraska where they were taking vacation,
right,
and he got kidnapped and everything, and the lore, William Afton killed kids at the restaurant for the most part there, but at the same point, they do mention that he was getting very unhinged at the current moment,
Right.
So it could just be one of the things where he was just on a spree at that point in time.
Yeah, well, where does this film take place?
It doesn't say.
Okay, because he has like a Visit Nebraska poster, and they're obviously not in Nebraska, but that's where they were when he got kidnapped. That is an interesting question. I didn't think about that he would have had to travel to kidnap this kid.
Yeah, that's why I was just kind of like confused in everything, because again,
there's a little bit too much like coincidence that happens to carry this plot, I feel like. But
I felt like, again, they could have just made it a different person, and then it's kind of revealed whenever William Afton appears later in the film that it's enough charge. Like, I felt like it didn't have to be William Afton specifically.
Yeah, it almost sort of cheapened it a little for me. It made it a little more juvenile of a film to be like, oh, and the bad guy was the same bad guy, so now all the motivations align. It's like, no, it's enough of a motivation to be like, this is a child kidnapper and killer. My brother was kidnapped and presumably killed. I fucking hate this guy double now. Like, it doesn't have to be that he kidnapped and killed my brother.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely would agree. And let's talk about William Afton. We've already brought him up. So, Matthew Lillard not only is the career counselor, but he's also William Afton.
Spoiler alert! I pieced that together pretty early. I think. Honestly, I was suspicious as soon as I saw they cast Matthew Lillard. I was like, he's got to be the bad guy, right? Like, he's like the biggest name in that movie besides arguably Josh Hutcherson, but.
Yeah, because that was the thing I was wondering about, because I had seen rumors about the film, and it says, like, oh yeah, this just in, Matthew Lillard is playing William Afton in the movie, and then I'm like, oh, okay. I figured, like, because I thought it was going to be, like, because I saw scenes where he has, like, his hands crossed and he's smiling at the camera, and I'm like, okay, he's William Afton, but then it shows him being the career counselor, and I'm like, okay, well, in the lore, he's definitely not a career counselor.
Right.
Doing that, so maybe that was just a rumor I had heard and everything, and Matthew Lillard is just willing to do this like fun small cameo, and maybe they'll have William Afton appear in the later films if they make them or anything, because I thought it was just going to stick solely to the 4 animatronics, Golden Freddy as a bonus. That's as much far as I got. But not only did we get William Afton, we got him in his Springtrap outfit there, which I thought was cool. I mean, that one thing I will say that was fun going to the movie theater is the audience. They definitely were having a good time. Like, there was lots of applause. Now, granted, it wasn't rambunctious by any means, but it was still fun. Like, because as soon as Springtrap revealed, everyone starts clapping and everything, and then they clap towards the end of the film.
Yeah, there was some clapping as the plane landed, so to speak. There was clapping at the end of this film.
Yeah, which was cool, but it's funny because it was cool for me because I wasn't expecting to see Springtrap, where I'm like, oh wow, they're bringing Springtrap into this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy, man, because they had couple of references. Obviously, Golden Freddy was one of them. Balloon Boy made an appearance, which he
several.
appeared in the second game.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't in the first game. That was nifty to see, but yeah, seeing the Springtrap outfit, because Springtrap appeared in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, and then it's revealed later that, you know, Bonnie you saw the videos. Bonnie was his favorite, and
Right.
so that was kind of like the original prototype, is just the golden Bonnie, as it were, there, but it's William Afton in the suit. And I like the idea of him being in the suit and revealed it's Matthew Lillard. This does raise a question. Does this mean, as a career counselor, he's been purposely getting people to take this job for him to, like, kill other people, I suppose?
Yeah, I was a little questioning his motivation, because at the end he was talking to Vanessa and he was like, your job, which is more of her shit we'll get into later. I was like, your job was just to keep him from sniffing around or whatever, and if they did, then to kill him. But yeah, I wondered if, like, why have a security guard at all if you're obviously very invested in this property still? And
yeah, it's very interesting how they kind of skewed that in, because I felt like they could have just forgone the William Afton aspect of the film.
Absolutely.
I don't feel like he was that pivotal.
No.
I feel like the only reason why he's included is just to have closure with the animatronics, because they're like, probably, well, you know, we don't want the main characters beating up the animatronics per se.
And it really is to shift the villainy off the animatronics, which they, I think, assumed
Yes.
audiences love and want to see more of, and still have a clean bow to wrap at the end. Is like, you defeated the villain. This guy was the villain, and the animatronics are just fine.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Not to mention, in the lore, the ghosts are the ones that actually kill William Afton. Because, you know, he starts panicking seeing the ghost, and he climbs into, like, the Springtrap outfit, I'm sure just to kind of assert his dominance over them, you know, because, again, that's, like, the face of fear they have, is that. But then whenever he slips into it, something causes the spring traps to activate, killing him in that moment. So I feel like that's the only reason why they had William Afton written in to the story, is just to, again, kind of make the animatronics the hero at the end of the film.
Right, and he does die the same way. Yeah, I mean, like, he's essentially, the motivations and the style is different because he's no longer controlling them or whatever, but they you know, they are presumably the ones activating the spring traps inside his costume to kill him, but
yes,
which
and
they don't really kill him, they just keep him in the closet or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's implied he's dying a slow, painful death.
Right.
Because
also leaves the door open for a sequel.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And so, I mean, I feel like for being cast as William Afton, I feel like Matthew Lillard, again, he's just perfect.
He's great, yeah.
He's just great, and you could tell he's having fun just playing up the villainy of William Afton, and just kind of the reveal and everything. Like, he was great. I love the casting of him as William Afton. It's just confusing plot-wise of, okay, why is he the career counselor as well? Like, unless he's purposely trying to feed people, like, wouldn't it be easier just to keep it closed, or they're trying to keep up a facade or something like that?
Yeah, he's gotta be, you know, maybe it's a way to keep people out of there for even longer, because, you know, there's gonna be rumors that the security guards keep quitting or dying.
Yeah, or the fact that the kids want more people to play with, supposedly.
Yeah, maybe
Because I know in the games, the reason that's given innately to the security guard is like, they have this security program built into them where they think you're an animatronic outside of a suit, so they need to stuff you inside of a suit. But I will say, like, whenever it came to stuffing inside the suits and everything, those masks were, I had a hard time believing they were just like, oh yeah, that looks like a regular mechanical outfit there, as opposed to Saw Death Trap.
It definitely saw a death machine, yeah.
So that it was definitely a little confusing on those aspects there. But Yeah, that's the only issue I had. Other than that, I felt like Matthew Lillard had a perfect performance. Genuinely perfect. Like, there is zero qualms I have with his performance. It's just more so the way, like, the plot is written with his character in mind and everything.
And isn't it like William Afton doesn't have like a face in like official Five Nights at Freddy's lore until this movie, right? He's not like a character you ever see, right?
No, I don't believe so.
I
don't
see him as like the purple pixel guy whenever people are talking about him.
Purple guy. That's the way he's described, and it is cool because if you notice the beginning of the film, it has like that same retrograde graphics where it does show him as in the Springtrap outfit, grabbing kids slowly away. I thought that was like a cool thing where I noticed. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. But it's also not something that, you know, if you missed out on, you're like, you know, wait, I'm confused, because they talked about that these kids were wrongfully killed and everything.
Right.
I do have to talk about his death. I thought that was a cool death scene, just kind of how the springs got activated, because in I think it's in two or three, I think, where they talk about like the springs activating, because it doesn't show anything hitting him, but whenever Cupcake flies towards his chest, it starts gnawing at him and everything. That causes one of the springs to trickle, and then it's like a domino effect. I thought it was a cool death scene.
I agree.
And everything, and especially all the spotlights being on him. It was cinematically set up beautifully.
I kind of got the impression that maybe because all the animatronics seem to have some level of control over all the electronics and power in this place, like they can turn on and off lights and close doors and stuff without being next to them, you know. I thought that maybe because they were all just staring at him, and like thought maybe they were the ones triggering the spring trap, like they were killing him.
You know what? I'm willing to throw that into the pod. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely would believe they would also choose, because again, it is revealed the only reason why the animatronics are working for him is because they don't realize he's the one that killed them.
Yeah, they've had that erased from their memory or whatever, and it only comes back when Abby draws a picture of it.
Yeah, which again, it is cheesy, but at the same point, like, it adds up. It adds up because you see her coloring the entire film,
right,
and everything. And again, they talk about talking about that teacher, like they communicate through pictures.
And it's later established that these are her imaginary friends that she's been talking to this whole time, and that's how she knows things about like her brother's death that she wasn't alive for, like her brother's kidnapping or whatever, and all sorts of details she should not be privy to. It's because ghost children are whispering in her ear or whatever. And it's only then that, you know, Mike looks at all these pictures and realizes that these are the kids that are in his dream. The one with the hat, the one with the bunny ears, you know.
Yeah, I definitely did like the climax of the film. I definitely thought, like, just how it, like, the high tensions began to end, like, the ultimate resolution, well, not resolution, that's afterwards, but yeah, the pivotal moment there, I thought was really good. And again, showing him be dragged off by the animatronics as the spring traps are clamping into him one by one painfully there, I just thought it was cool. And again, we see Golden Freddy and Springtrap animatronic, they also look great. I think it just looks good. It was definitely like a good fan moment as well as a good cinematic moment, in my opinion. I did want to talk about Golden Freddy, because one thing that does make me be like, how Golden Freddy gets all the way to Abby's house there.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I definitely had questions as to what was real and what wasn't, because sometimes she's seeing him as a kid, and sometimes she's seeing him as this bear, but obviously the bear kills the ant lady, so it's obviously that something physical was there and murdered her. And then whenever she gets the taxi, the giant bear just sits in and like leans the taxi one direction, and the taxi driver's like, I always get the weird ones, you know, let me just drive you back to this place. Like, just doesn't even bat an eye on it. So I thought that was kind of like corny and did kind of disillusion it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, the animatronics should be limited to the range of Freddy Fazbear's. But
yes, that's exactly what I thought as well. I just thought it was a weird decision that was only made because it's like, Well, how do we get rid of the aunt? We kill her. How do we bring Abby back to Freddy Fazbear's? I keep wanting to say Five Nights at Freddy's. Bring it back to Freddy Fazbear's. So I felt like those moments were a little bit poorly executed there, where it's just like, okay. But at the point, I mean, it just keeps the story moving along and everything. I did find it funny, the whole like aunt plot going on there, because she is literally there to lead to more bodies.
Sure.
Yes, I because she's the one that kind of initiates the whole thing at the diner where Mad Pat's at, because she's basically talking to Mike's friend, I believe her name's Max, who's been babysitting his little sister Abby for free, and then it turns out she's just there to kind of see if he's a terrible guardian.
Well, I might have missed this, but I think that's his cousin Max.
Yes,
So
it is.
her,
yes.
So that's her daughter that she's like making babysit, but also find out the scoop or whatever.
Got it. Yes. That. I didn't even put that down, man. Kudos to you, man.
Thanks.
Kudos to you. Yes. And so I do like the fact that you do make her somewhat sympathetic. Like, she's like not a fan of this moving along, but at the same point, she's like, we need the money. And then you have like one note boyfriend who's clearly going to die. You just saw like a target on him the entire time. And I mean, as cheesy as it is, it's like, yeah, sure, I can believe it with the plot, and B, if it leads to animatronics killing more people, go for it.
Yeah, it just was a sort of jarring point of the movie of like these 4 kids break in during the day and are just murdered, and I feel like it was just so that you could see that the animatronics were dangerous and murderous without having to murder the main character or whatever.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was just so bizarre to me.
It was definitely a bizarre moment, like whenever they were introducing this plot and everything, that it's just like, okay, yeah, we're doing this, and especially breaking during the day shift, because I thought they were going to break in at night or something,
right, because
and
it's like
knock them out.
I didn't even really understand the logic, because like, why would he be liable for the things that happened when he wasn't on duty? You know what I mean?
That's kind of like what I'm thinking, because again, like, his shift is from 12 a.m. to 6,
right?
6-hour shift. That's it. And so, like, I know it's revealed later, he's like, I'm sorry, I was tired, I left a door open or something. I'm like,
yeah,
you could break into Fazbear's easily.
The police officer was like, yeah, you left a door open, that makes you criminally negligent. And I was like, that's not how that works, man.
Yeah,
like, it's an abandoned property that some people broke into.
Yeah, because that was the thing also. We'll jump to the murders that happened in the building, but whenever Vanessa comes back and she's like saying, you know, man, I could write you up for a police report and everything. And I'm just like, why don't you?
Right.
Why, if this is a criminal offense, why don't you? And I guess it's just having sympathy or whatever. But also, I guess because she's William Afton's daughter. But then again, it's like, why would you even bring it up in the first place? I guess just to bring awareness. I guess. But again, it's just kind of like a weird thing that it's like anybody could break into that building.
Right. She's such a weird character that, like, she's a police officer, and her whole job under her dad's purview is to keep this place tidy and make sure the security guards don't put their nose in where they're supposed to be, which makes sense why she's like so involved all of a sudden. Like, you're the new security guard. Well, I love this place, blah, blah. I used to come here as a kid. Check out all this stuff. And I do like that, because in the beginning I'm just like, who the fuck is this bitch? Like, like, she seems really shoot in, but I do like that they do give the audience hints pretty, like, fairly early into her character that, like, she knows things she shouldn't know.
Yes.
Like, she's like, well, here's the, like, at first she was like, I know where they keep the medical kits or whatever, and it's like, that's a weird thing to know, but whatever, I just blew it off as, like, that's just bad writing. But then, then later she's like, whenever they do parties, they keep the tablecloths back here or whatever. And Mike's like, how do you know that? And she just doesn't answer him. And it's like, oh, okay. So you kind of get the point. It's like, she's like in on this somehow. But she never at any point seems nefarious, which I feel like they should have maybe tried to lace in a little, like, to make you suspicious of, like, is she? But she's never like a character of interest. She's just like this weird policewoman. Is she just a really weird woman that the movie shoot in, or is she up to something? And I really wish they had amped up the up to something part, but
Yeah, I definitely feel like her character slowly being revealed throughout the movie was kind of poor at some
Yeah.
points. I mean, it makes sense if you look at the whole scheme of things. Like, again, like, well, she never intended on writing the report, but I feel like it's just more plot wise and everything moving along. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a way that Abby gets to meet Vanessa, so she knows who she is and everything.
right.
And then there's just lots of like kind of confusing stuff. Like, it's like Vanessa is like, yep, they're alive, and they like her because kids and everything. And going along with this, I'm like, what was the long-term game plan for you? What was the goal in mind? And so that's whenever it gets really messy looking at that plot aspect. Vanessa is just kind of a messy character.
She is. Yeah, she's like doing all this stuff for her dad.
Yeah.
But she hates her dad, and it says that he's a bad person, and she's the cop that would presumably have the power to put him away, but no, she doesn't. And then she shoots him later, and it's so weird. She just gives her police car to Mike to like go back.
That I lost my mind. I'm
Which
like,
was like-
what film is this?
She is just the worst written character in like a film where all the other characters are like okay, and she's just like none of her motivations make sense. Why didn't she just drop him off?
Yeah, do that. Why not? Here, take
my police car.
Because she does mention, she's like, I if I go there, I won't be able to handle it or whatever. And I'm guessing she's afraid to stand up to her dad.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
guess.
quite get why. Like, does she? 'Cause
Yeah.
She's working for her dad. It is revealed when they talk. She's like, all you had to do was do this and this, and she's like, that's 2 jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
But she's like.
Which is
if
a
you're
weird
doing-
callback because Mike is the one that said that at the
Right.
beginning. So,
right, so
I was,
she wouldn't have known that, so she wasn't
Yeah.
saying it on purpose. It was
Just
like
a weird
purely audience-driven callback.
yes, exactly. But yeah, go ahead with that.
But yeah, she just doesn't make sense as a character because she's obviously like doing stuff enough for her dad to like help him with his like murder shit or whatever. Like, yeah, well, I know that all these kids are stuffed in costumes, but I'm not gonna be like the cops wouldn't never think to look there. Like, you are the cops. That's you. But so I thought there was gonna be some like, she works with him, but she regrets it or something. Like, I wish there was more moral ambiguity to her character, but she's legitimately just a good-natured person that wants to help Mike or whatever, and that makes her come off as very strange in so many points.
yes, absolutely.
If she was scared of her dad or something, I wish they would have gave a line or two to suggest that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and
something
then if,
more.
even just there where she's like, I wouldn't be able to stand up to him or whatever, and he'd be like, why? He'd murder people or whatever, and she would be like, he's still my dad or something. Then that would be okay. It's not a great motivation, but at least I get it.
Yeah, there just wasn't that much great motivation behind her, and even whenever she does finally stand up, it feels like she never had a problem standing up against him.
Exactly. There wasn't that much hesitation. She just like shoots him. He's like, you're not gonna shoot me, and then she shoots him, and he's like, okay, well, check that one off the plot list. You got me.
Yeah, she was just a weird character, and she could have been so much better. I feel like. I definitely feel like they needed to go back to the drawing
She's
board with
the
her character.
that I feel like most of the audience has the most question marks about. Like, okay, who is she? What? But not in a good way. And I feel like if they
Yes.
just kind of shifted it a little, made her, even just the tone of her being there, and like she's like, okay, why are you here in the first place? But like Mike just like accepts everything about her,
Yes.
without questioning it until it gets to the minutia of like, why do you know there's tablecloths here? Instead of being like in the beginning, like, why are you here, officer? Like,
Yeah, it was just so bizarre, and so that's kind of like the unfortunate aspect, which I guess now she's in like a coma or something. She's
she
stable
got
life.
stabbed, and she's in the hospital, but still alive, but not awake, I guess.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Probably again feels like they're setting up for a sequel, especially with like the end where it shows like the kid that's stuffed in a golden Freddy outfit looks at William Afton stuffed in the Springtrap costume, getting still like bleeding out and everything, and closing the door on it. Definitely kind of bizarre overall, but again, it's like, yeah, it's fine, lightly set up for a sequel. I didn't feel like it was too much like cliffhanger or whatever.
I wonder if she's gonna come back, like if they're gonna do security breach or something. You know what I mean? In the next movie, and it's gonna be revealed that she was the security guard back in the 80s or whatever. She's too old. She's too young in this movie.
Yeah,
to do that,
it
but
doesn't really have a modern timeline. Granted, they're using older phones.
Yeah, it does seem like this is only like the 90s or something because a lot of the shit in there just seemed older, and I didn't know if it was just because Mike was poor or like, but it didn't seem like it was in the 2020s, I'll put it that way, which might lend itself to be like, okay, the 80s weren't that long ago, especially if it's the late 80s or whatever, and she was the security guard at a different location or something back when this was a huge franchise.
Yeah, I'm guessing it has to be like after 87, because like the bite of 87, that's like what closed it down initially.
Right.
There. So
yes, I just wonder if that's because that's what her character is in the games, is she was the security guard for that game. But
yeah, timelines, man. Timelines. But yeah, another aspect I did want to focus on is one of the ones where I was rolling my eyes heavily at, even though it did make sense, is like, they're having like, oh man, there's way more stuff I want to just dissect and everything, but I guess I'll jump to this point. Is whenever they're like they've just had this fun party and everything, which, mind you, it was the most campiest what am I watching thing. Whenever they're just like, yeah, let's have a party, let's build a fort, we're gonna need to make it big for the animatronics. Like,
that was so bizarre because like, yeah, that was like halfway through the movie, and I was wanting to still be scared of the animatronics, but they're like, nope, they're all our buddies and they're gonna help us build a fort.
Yeah, they're like, oh, they're cute, they're kids and everything, and doing that, and they're just doing goofy stuff, which it was like one of those things I'm like, I should hate this, but I like it. Like, as weird as it is, it's just so silly and goofy.
I did like that, he wakes up and finds his sister Abby surrounded by them, and is like, holy shit, and then it turns out that they're like having fun, but he's still like really hesitant of them. I liked that, but then whenever it's just like full on like, no, these guys are fine, until William Afton comes in later and makes them murderous again.
Yeah, it was just kind of like a weird thing, and then they're like jamming out, and then it's like Abby goes to hit Bonnie's guitar, which was seen exploding earlier, and she's like, no!
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then like all the fun's over, and it takes the kid out, and she's like, I don't want you ever to bring Abby back here again, you're terrible and everything, and that just kind of sends him in a mental dizzy, and that makes him be like, okay, guess I better call my aunt, I'm a terrible guardian and everything, and do that, and then having the talk and everything, like, and she's like, I hate you, and I'm like, I have seen this exact scene,
right? And it's just
so many
it's
times,
all just a miscommunication because he didn't get the chance to be like, listen, she's just gonna babysit you for tonight while I go work, and not that I'm giving you over to her, because he was conveniently interrupted by the doorbell whenever she found the family custody papers or whatever.
Yeah,
and he didn't get to explain, I'm fighting to keep you, So it's just one of those like dumb plots that's driven by the fact that characters don't communicate, even though they could easily have just had one conversation and none of this conflict would exist.
Yeah, and again, they just continue to make the aunt a villain, like uncaring. She's like, like, you and I will have to have a talk later. Then she's like, come out of the room. Okay, whatever. I'll just watch Chia Pets on television. Just doing whatever. Speaking of killing, whenever they have the hit squad, the goon squad, arrive at the property in broad daylight, and the only reason why they're able to break in is because Mike coincidentally left a door open, even though I felt like they could have just broken in.
Yeah, it didn't seem
and
like
everything.
It was that locked up tight, you know what I mean?
But them going in and breaking up stuff, again, I just felt like they are cannon fodder, but I felt like the film needed to show the animatronics killing people.
They did, but that's why, I liked the opening sequence with the other security guard, the last security guard or whatever. You could see them kind of hunting in the same way that they did in the first game, but then, they just were like, well, it's halfway through the movie, we need somebody to die, so here's 4 of them.
Yeah, and all 4 of them got their own kills and everything, which I did find really fun, because, again, like, they show the foxy, kill where he's like at the end of his hallway, he runs in the game and the guy's trapped on the other side,
Trying to open
and
the
then
door, yeah.
you just hear that, you hear exactly from the game that you know, sort of thing, and he runs across. I was like, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. And then having Cupcake, like, you know, again, screw around with the guy, like, eating his face and everything, I thought was fun. And Chica being there. I did love the bearded guy just screaming at the top of his lungs, running around the restaurant, and, like, the head goon being like, what the heck? And then, like, he ends up going into a closet that magically opens for him. That's the thing I love.
Yeah, it opens and he's like, well, I guess I should go in here.
Yeah, and then he opens the lights and you see it's like Bonnie in there. Then you just hear, like, you know, screams and rustling around and see the bloody handprint. And I do love that the door just magically opens up. And then, you know, I wasn't expecting anybody to, like, walk out, but then you just see Bonnie jumble out, and then the head goon guy's like, oh no. And then as he's running away, like, he was so excited by stealing tokens from the machine. And I'm just like, these falling out of the machine. These are amateur goon squad here.
They are just really hooligans.
And so then, like, just seeing him, you know, run away from Bonnie and everything. And
is he the one that gets ripped in half?
No, that's Max.
Oh, that's when Max
who appears later. For him, I can't remember how he dies. I think Bonnie traps him at the end of a hallway, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it is. You think I would remember it. I remember the other deaths, but yeah, because that's like the thing where Max isn't sure, and she's like, it's really quiet in there. And then she goes in and sees a kid like, come on, let's go. And it's just like, if I saw a kid do that, I'd be like, nope. You know, just walk back out. But for her, she's like, oh, what's the kid doing here? And then whenever it's like getting warmer, I was like, again, if you didn't leave at the first instance, now's your last chance for the chicken exit, basically.
Yeah, dude, I would not have ran that far into that building. I would have walked out, made a 911 call.
Yeah, did that, but no, she, like, sees that it's the Freddy animatronic talking, gets a chair to look inside the mouth there, and then it shows, like, a kid's head grabbing her, dragging her in, and the jaw snapping, cutting her body in half. That was, I could not believe that scene actually made it in.
Yeah, they just show the, like, shadow of it or whatever, but still, it was like, wow.
Yeah, like, I mean, they definitely showed the shadow of her, like, getting bitten in, but then you see, like, legs drop.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so over the top and ridiculous and silly, but at the same point, I mean, I feel like if the animatronics didn't kill enough people, then people would have felt ripped off.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they definitely, it's like that slasher mentality. You want to see your killers, you know, go around killing people.
You need to establish that, like, the people that you're supposed to be scared of are, like, worthy of being scared of.
Yes, exactly. That is also very, very true. So, yeah, I thought that was a fun sequence. Granted, it's fun ideas. It's just poorly navigated there.
It was definitely, like, I don't even want to say campy, because it's not campy in, like, a traditional horror sense. It was just, like, kind of cheesy.
Yeah. Very cheesy. I think that's a good way to describe this film. Not that cheese is a bad thing. Cheese is delicious and everything, but it was cheesy regardless.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm trying to think, is there anything else to discuss with this film, or anything else you wanted to talk about, bud?
I don't think so. Yeah, the two big, like, things that were jarring. That's the thing we just talked about was the one I referenced in the middle of the movie, where it was just kind of like, that happened, all right? Like, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, just overall, my thoughts are, yeah, I just wish we had seen a little more you're alone in a thing with scary animatronics, and a lot less of all the other characters and movies and motivations.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that. I just felt like they had, again, multiple ideas they wanted to incorporate, and it kind of ended up being a mishmash of stuff. Because, again, I think as much as I love Matthew Lillard, and as perfect as he was as William Afton, I felt like it did kind of muddy it up a bit, you know, including just so many convoluted plots.
It's like they needed a big villain that was revealed at the end, and then you resolved it or whatever, when I don't think this was necessary.
Yeah. Granted, I also feel like maybe they had the thing of, well, if we only do one, here's what all the stuff we want to do. So there is that trade-off at the very least.
Right.
I will say one of the weirdest things is the mid-credit scene showing the taxi driver, because they have the balloon boy jump scare 2 times in the film, and then the third time he's in the vehicle, which again raises the question, why is Balloon Boy here and everything?
Maybe they're teasing that if they're making a sequel, it's going to be based on the second game or something.
Yeah, which is actually a prequel, if you did not know. Yeah, I know, super exciting. I think that one takes place in 83, I want to say. Well, no, actually, I don't think it takes place in 83. Okay, I need to refresh on the FNAF lore, clearly. But, yeah, definitely just odd stuff, but still a fun film. Yeah. Still a very fun film. And so I feel like our critiques and recommendations still stand up, that, you know, if you are curious, because my wife didn't know anything about the FNAF lore, and she really enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she enjoyed it. She thought it was really fun, so...
Yeah, I agree. I think if you don't know anything about it, that's you're still going to get a lot out of this movie. It's not all, like, winking at the camera references. It's... you know, it's definitely just the idea of creepy animatronics is going to appeal to any horror fan. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, aside from that, we'll clock out for this shift, and let's go ahead and check out the next movie we're going to be watching for the podcast. So this one, we're going back to the 40s. The 40s, specifically the year 1941.
As the date of the movie or the time it's set in?
Great question. Whenever the movie was released.
Okay, all right.
And it's
Casablanca.
Yes, how'd you know? The ultimate horror film. No, basically, it is based on an iconic monster that is portrayed by Lon Chaney Jr.
Love that guy.
And well, it's all good. He is the son of Lon Chaney. Who his dad played the Hunchback in the Hunchback of Notre Dame and the Phantom in the Phantom of the Opera. And his son is taking up the reins of tackling another Universal monster that is part of the popular lineups, such as titular characters like Dracula and Frankenstein's monster.
Man, just based off that, I'm just gonna go down popular Universal monsters. Is it the swamp thing, the swamp guy?
You're in the ballpark, but think more land.
Land. Is it the Blob?
More furry.
Furry, a werewolf.
Yep.
He's I don't know what the title of the movie would be.
You're good.
But he's a werewolf.
Yes, it is that movie indeed. It's the Wolfman that we'll be watching.
Yeah, Wolfman, okay.
So, I know you enjoyed last November visiting family members of the classic monster family. Yeah. So we're returning back to that. So, yep. Yes, am I right? Thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see y'all again next time when we're popping the scary with the Wolfman.
Bark.
Barking up the wrong tree. Am I right or am I wrong? Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @CoalkirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.